Existentialism is the philosophy of man, and it was developed in the 20th century, and it was developed during the first two great world wars. Mainly it was developed in France, Germany, Europe, and also in some parts of Russia. The famous Russian writer Dostoevsky is well known to you. Now we are here to consider some of the chief tenets of Sartre's philosophy of existentialism and about man. Existentialism takes great interest in conceiving what man is. What is the meaning of human existence? The meaning of human existence as different, as distinct from the existence of the other objects in the world. What are the objects in the world? How are they? They just exist. But whereas in the case of human being, the thing is different, the philosophy is different, the understanding and the meaning is different. Sartre here to explain to us what is the meaning of human existence. When talking about human existence, let us take some illustrations. I will illustrate one case. Before I came to this studio, and when the studio was not opened at night, there was this lens, camera lens, and the stand, and the lights, and there was dark. There was this chair and the table, but they knew not what they are meant for. They were not aware of any of their essence. They just existed. But when the studio opened and the cameraman sat and started operating, the lens is no more than a lens but a camera. The essence, the idea of camera is given to it by somebody. The stand, idea is a stand. It is the manufacturer who creates the stand. Stand by itself does not stand. So, it is the case about the table or a chair. The tableness or the chairness are the ideas which are given to the things by somebody else. A log does not itself chooses to be a chair or to be a table. What does it mean? It means that in case of the world of objects, essences are prior to their existences. Essence is the first thing, later on there is the existence accordingly. It was the great philosopher, Greek great philosopher Plato, who conceived the world of two separate things. One, the world of ideas on one hand. The world of ideas means the world of forms, the world of essences, and on the other hand the world of things, objects. What is prior? When asked Plato, Plato said that the world of essences are prior to the world of existences. Sartre begs to differ with Plato, because he says that in case of man there are no essences prior. It is true that in case of a table or a chair or a tree, the essence is prior to their existence. But in case of man, it is not the case. In case of man, the human existence is first, and a human being decides on his own what the essence ought to be. That is the freedom, that is the freedom to be enjoyed by a human being. That is something wonderful, significant and remarkable as the chief tenet of Sartre's philosophy. Sartre concludes about the existence in a way that he says that there are two modes of being. One mode of being is called as being in itself, and the other mode of being is called as being for itself. Now, there are two modes of existence. One, the being in itself. Being in itself is the world of all non-living objects, such as the seas, rivers, hills, trees, the sun, the moon, the houses, the playthings, the everything, the furniture and anything for that matter. It is the world of en soi, he says. En soi is a French term for being in itself. How is this en soi world? En soi world is without any consciousness. It knows not what for it exists. It just exists and just exists. It has no purpose. It is not aware of any purpose. It is not aware of any meaning, and it has not to do anything with the part of meaning or the role of meaning. It just exists. This is called as en soi world. En soi world is determined world. It does not determine itself. Somebody else determines it. A chair is designed by a carpenter. A table is designed by a carpenter. A house is designed by an architect, and accordingly the house is constructed, and accordingly the chair is constructed. But the bricks of the house, the stones of the house, the wood is used in the house does not know that it is a part of the house, does not know what function it has to perform. It is just a brute reality. Jean-Paul Sartre, in one of the famous novel, Nausea is the name of the novel, he describes his hero. What does that hero do? The hero is sitting under a chestnut tree in a very meditative, contemplative mood. He looks at the roots of the chestnut tree. The roots of the chestnut tree are very solid and unintelligent, very dull, and they are going into the soil. When he looks at the chestnut tree roots, he finds that the reality is very stark, dull, unintelligent, without any imagination, without any purpose. He then by that experience is shocked and he suffers from nausea. This is a symbolic representation of the external world, the en soi world. En soi world he describes as a brute fact. Is man a part of the brute fact? No, man is different. He belongs to the other mode of being, meaning pour soi is a French term. In English it is translated as being for itself. Being for itself means for some purpose. Human life is purposive life. It is teleological life. Tele means purpose. Man always wants to give some purpose to his life. Without there being any purpose, he cannot simply live. Purpose could be anything, purpose or meaning. So, giving meaning to life is very important. What is the most important characteristic that distinguishes man from the rest of the objective world, natural world, is that man has consciousness. The world of objects have no consciousness. The chair does not know who is sitting on. The table does not know what is put on it. They are not conscious. Even if they are broken, they do not have any complaint. But this is not the case with man. Man's consciousness is really what man is. So, consciousness is human being. But how is consciousness? Human consciousness is consciousness of some kind of purpose. Therefore, human life, that is the being for itself, is the life called as purposive life, having some end. So, there are two realities then, or two existences then, two modes of existences, the en soi and the pour soi. Now, furthermore, What is important to note down about Sartre's philosophy is that how the nausea is experienced, and there is one more important point, that of the alienation, which has slowly and gradually come to the idea of alienation. And the most important thing now to be noted about Sartre's philosophy is idea of consciousness. Just now I have said, as according to Sartre, that it is the consciousness which distinguishes man from the rest of the world. But how is the consciousness? Consciousness in our day to day life is always of something. I am conscious that I am lecturing, I may be conscious that I am taking some exercise, I may be conscious that I am looking at the beautiful sky or the starry heaven and enjoying the atmosphere and so on. So, consciousness is always of something that takes place right from the childhood till the present moment, and it will go on even in the future till my death. I will be conscious of this place or that place, this role or that role, this act or that act, and so on. So, consciousness is always filled up by something. Consciousness could be filled by one's idea of religion, one's idea of good and bad, one's idea of right and wrong, one's idea whether God exists or not, and so many things are there by which the consciousness is filled. So, Sartre describes consciousness is like an empty cup. In the beginning, the cup is empty. You may fill in it any kind of juice or plain water. That does not make any difference to the cup, but till the moment something is filled in it, it becomes of that consciousness of the juice or the consciousness of milk or whatever the case is. It is the case with man, the man in bondage. He is bounded by his ideas of religion, ideas of his good or bad, and so on. Thus, his consciousness is filled up with something. What is most important about man? That he has to examine whether what is filled in his consciousness is really his own or not. There is really the criteria as whether man exists or not. The existence of man is a very different notion than the existence of a table or a chair or a cow or a leaf or a flower, because all those objects just exist without knowing what their essences are, what their purposes are, what is the meaning of their existence. But human existence is in order to be meaningful, what man has to do is that his consciousness he has to negate. What is the meaning of negation of consciousness? The negation of consciousness means putting out everything out of the cup of consciousness. How is the consciousness? Consciousness is like a mirror. What does mirror do? Mirror goes on reflecting whatever comes in front of it. You show any object and it is reflected. You show a chair or a table or a cupboard or a shelf of books or a cow or anything, it reflects. So, consciousness works as a reflective something. So, you will find that what is important in case of man, that man has to say no to all. I am not this, I am not that, by judging whether really he wanted to be that. See, here lies the freedom of man to choose. In other words, to be is to choose according to Sartre. Jean-Paul Sartre has a great regard for man, that is human existence. Human existence has a different category, a very different category, altogether different category from the existence of the external world, the natural world, the world of things or objects. What is important and what is so significant, what is so remarkable about human existence? About human existence, the most remarkable thing is his freedom. Man is condemned to be free, says Sartre, because he alone can question his own existence. The true existence lies in conceiving that man is able to question his own existence, the meaning of his own existence, the idea of his own existence. That is what is important as according to Jean-Paul Sartre. Jean-Paul Sartre says that the freedom that is given to man is the freedom of negation, negative freedom. Negative freedoms rise in saying no. I can say that I do not want to be a teacher, I do not want to be a carpenter, I do not want to be a leader, I do not want to be a clerk, and so on. Then furthermore, I have to say what I have to be. Means first of all, unless there is the freedom of negation, there cannot be the positive freedom. This is the wonderful contribution of Jean-Paul Sartre in his philosophy of man. But what really happens in case of man in his day-to-day life? When in his day-to-day life, he is not aware that what he is. He just goes on playing the various roles, and each role he supposes that it is his own role. He does not examine, he does not judge, he does not critically evaluate whether the role that he is playing is his own real something. As an actor plays different roles, but after the show is over, after the play is over, he knows that his role is different. But man cheats himself. He cheats himself playing different roles and identifying himself with the different roles and losing his own identity. What is this all known as? Sartre describes all this is as bad faith. This is living like a bad faith. What is the living bad faith? Living bad faith means living in alienation. What is this alienation? Alienation is alienating some from oneself and being other and leaving that otherness. How I am concerned with otherness? Man is concerned with himself, he is not concerned with the otherness, but he lives, and when he lives, that living is false, that living is nonsensical, that living is the living of bad faith. So, bad faith is the idea. In one of his novels, he describes a hero, an author. What does the author do? Author is very famous and very popular for historical writing. Once he decides to write about a king, he visits the place where the king was born. He sees the fort and everything there, and he wants to know what the hero was. He reads about the hero, he talks to people about him, tries to know more and more about him and wanted to write about him. But the moment he starts writing about it, he realizes that what the hell he is going to do with that hero. That hero is somebody else, he cannot become somebody else than himself. What is just important in what is the importance in being other and living accordingly? That is the case of bad faith. So, the author decides not to write about the king. That is the wonderful experience, the experience of bad faith. Another example that is cited by Sartre, that there is a wolf or a fox, as he is looking at the grapes are too high and he cannot and the wolf cannot jump, cannot reach to the grapes. So, what the wolf says that the grapes are bitter. That means, he lives again in a bad faith. Should a man live in bad faith? Bad faith is a very, very sorrowful condition. So, you have to leave the bad faith and be yourself and look for your identity. That is very important in case of man. What really is important in case of man is the constant search for what really one is. For that purpose, what is important is that man has to start from the nothing. What is this nothing? His idea of nothingness is very significant in his philosophy. When the cup is empty, it is nothing, and that nothingness is a condition which is a philosophical condition, because now there is the problem of responsibility. One has to take the responsibility as what to fill into that cup, what am I to be, is really a very, very philosophical significant thing, significant question. Then I have to start with my nothingness. Nothingness is not that easy to digest. It may disgust you, it may throw out anywhere, and you may feel at a moment that you are just out there. But slowly and gradually, that nothingness alone can give you the feeling of the zeroness, and the zeroness you have to feel. That is what is significant of human life, nothingness. Nothingness is then the root of every human action. What is human existence? Human existence lies in choosing and acting accordingly. Man is a person who acts. Acting here is a wider term, thinking, desiring, expecting, giving purpose, these are all actions, and all these actions must be purposive, and all these purposes must be determined by the person himself. This is how the journey starts towards existence, the real existence, not the existence of a log or not the existence of a stone or a planet. It is something different. Lastly, to speak about whether God exists or not, Sartre very pertinently says, what is the use of the idea of God at all? What makes you believe in the existence of God? To believe in the existence of God is just futile. To believe in the existence of God is very contradictory. My man, says Sartre, dear man, you know what you ought to be. You choose what you ought to be. There is no need of God to interfere in your existence. The real meaning of existence can be given by oneself. He need not look for the help of God. The very idea of the existence of God is just absurd. What is more absurd is just to be there. So, in the beginning, unless and until there is the experience of the absurdity of life, the life is very vast, infinite, the time has no limit, the space has no limit, and we are living in it. Should we just go on flowing with this, or should we at some time stop and introspect and meditate what we ought to be? That is what is important according to Jean-Paul Sartre. That is what is really the meaning of human existence, and human existence is distinct from the existence of the other things. The other things just are there. The garden is there, or the park is there, the stool is there, and a hammer is there, and a nail is there, and a wall is there. Do you want to include your name in the list, a nail, a chair, and a person and yourself? No, the person or the yourself is a different being, different than a hammer, different than a screw, different than a stone or a chair or a table. So, look how wonderfully Sartre has given exposition to the idea of human existence on the one hand and the existence of other objects. To sum up Sartre's philosophy of man, I may say that in case of man, that is being for himself, you will find that not the essence, but existence is prior to his essence. Whereas, in the case of non-living objects, essences are prior to their existences. So, it is very important to note that human existence is very significant and a definite and a philosophical position to start with a new life, a purposive life, and a life full of meaning.